All right, joining us now, ran for governor, got beat by a hair. Now he's a candidate for U.S. Senate in 2018. Had a big press conference yesterday. Corey Stewart, chairman of the Prince William County Board of Supervisors. Corey Stewart, good to have you, man.
Hey, John, always great to be on your show.
Hey, Corey, I really was excited about your idea for dealing with the NFL kneelers that will not stand up for 90 seconds when we do the national anthem. And you had a press conference on it yesterday. I thought it was a brilliant move, I got to be honest. I don't want to steal your thunder. Share with our audience what your idea is.
Well, what I'm proposing to do is to repeal the Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961, which allows, it gives a special exemption from antitrust laws in the United States for the NFL. It was passed in 1961 because at that time, you had a lot of veterans who were NFL players who not only, stood at attention for the national anthem, but who were big advocates for the United States, very, very patriotic men. And the country felt that it was, this is a way to kind of support the NFL. Well, that's no longer needed, and especially it's no longer needed since the NFL has now turned its back on our national anthem, turned its back on our flag, turned its back on our country. And so it's time to remove and repeal the special exemption, the special treatment that we provide to the NFL.
Can you elaborate for our listeners, Corey, what the antitrust exemption for the NFL, what that actually does? What does that actually mean?
Well,
like, how does it help
essentially, so antitrust laws prevent corporations, prevent companies from acting as cartels. If it weren't for antitrust legislation, you'd have the big corporation doing price fixing, coming into agreeing with one another about what the prices were going to be, and it's anti-competitive behavior that the antitrust laws protect Americans from. But Congress provided this exemption for the NFL, meaning that the teams are allowed to cooperate with one another under the umbrella, if you will, of the NFL. So they do fix the prices for games. That's why they're so expensive in the NFL. They fix the prices for NFL paraphernalia, and they fix and most importantly, they negotiate as one entity with the networks with regard to broadcasting rights, and that means that everything is expensive, and it hurts the consumers. If we repeal the Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961, the teams would actually have to become not just competitors on the ball field, they would have to become business competitors, which would mean that would drive down the cost of broadcast to the broadcasters, and it would drive down the cost of watching the games. You'd be able to see games of other on television of other teams that you like across the country. It would also bring down ticket prices. So it's time to end that special exemption.
Because each team would have to negotiate their own deal on TV. You couldn't do it as a conglomerate. Right now, what they can do as a consortium is all, whatever there are, 32 teams get together, they fix the price. It's all fixed. And so
right. And
they don't operate.
Why? Why do we allow that? Every other business in every other industry, for the most part, has to compete with the other businesses. But we give this a special exemption to the NFL, and there's no reason to do it anymore, especially given their behavior.
Especially given their behavior, no doubt. Just to give people an example, Corey, I worked in the newspaper business before I got into radio most of my career. And so when we were on the business side of a major daily newspaper, right, like if you take the state of Florida where I worked for a time, individual newspapers had to negotiate advertising rates separately with each advertiser, even if I was with McClatchy that owned like 3 or 4 papers in a state, we couldn't negotiate with them with all the papers getting together because that would have violated the antitrust. So as a result of that, every individual newspaper, Orlando, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Atlanta Constitution Journal, Columbus Ledger, everybody had to deal with the big companies individually, or you would have violated the Antitrust Act. What that did is that kept rates down for advertisers. because they were all negotiated individually. You couldn't take 30 papers and say, this is our insert rate or this is our in-newspaper ad rate. Does that make sense? So it's the same thing. And so you give this NFL this huge opportunity to increase the value of their franchises because they operate in a legalized monopoly, right? Makes no sense.
Yeah, it makes no sense. And plus, look, I mean, people are very, very angry with the NFL. These cowards, getting down on their knee, sitting on the bench, staying in the locker room, and they say that they're not protesting the country. But, well, then why are they protesting during the national anthem? That's the shameful thing, is that, they're really turning their backs, not just taking a knee, on the national anthem, but really to the flag and to the country, and and all the veterans who have fought, in many cases died for our country as well.
So, like, if they wanted to protest, they could get their butts up an hour early. They can get to whatever stadium they're playing an hour early. They're all millionaires, Corey. Every single one of them. The average salary is $2.2 million annually. They could take out some of their own money. They could buy a stage. They could buy it across from the stadium, get there early, right? And then they could do an hour protest, jump up and down, sing songs, go on mic, spit on the flag, spin. They can do anything they please, right? Get the license for the protest and protest their hearts out. Why do it by spitting on the national anthem? I mean, figuratively speaking, when all people are trying to do is watch a football game. I think this is one of the most despicable things. And the fact that the mainstream media not only is not calling them out, but they're celebrating this. I mean, is that crazy or what?
Oh, yeah, it's totally nuts. I mean, look, they're protesting. What? These guys don't even know why they're protesting. They have no idea why they're sitting on the bench. They have no idea why they're essentially spitting on the flag. They have no idea. But the thing is, they're saying, well, we need racial justice, blah 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 blah, all this other stuff that they're inventing. The thing is that our Constitution is perfect, but our country is not, and our country will never be perfect because it's made up of people, and people are imperfect. But if you're going to take a knee to the national anthem and refuse to stand up for our flag until our country is perfect and is justice for everybody and everything's perfect, you're going to be on your knee forever. And that these guys need to understand that when men and women gave their lives and stood up and fought for this country over the past 200 and some years, they didn't do so thinking that the United States was perfect, but they did know that it was the closest thing to perfection that the world has, and that you have to respect your flag and you have to respect your country.
Hey, I read Hillary's book. I got through 100 pages, Corey, and then I just didn't find it interesting, right? It was not that I objected to it. It's it was not interesting to me. So I got through 100 pages, though, and then I started and I did buy it, right, in 1995. Idiot I am. Then I started flipping through the pages, and I'm trying to find out the Tim Kaine chapter. And there was no chapter. Then I'm trying to find the Tim Kaine, pages. No pages. Then I was down to the Tim Kaine paragraph. And finally I got a Tim Kaine sentence. Where was the chapter in Hillary's book on Tim Kaine?
Yeah.
Did I miss it?
Well, look, I got to tell you, I haven't read Hillary's book. I have no intention of doing so. I'll take your word for it that she barely mentioned Tim Kaine or didn't mention Tim Kaine. And this is what I think. I think that the fact that Hillary lost is due 99% due to Hillary Clinton, but Democrats blame in part Tim Kaine for failing to help Hillary. He certainly didn't do her any good with his horrendous debate performance down in Farmville, and so I think that what it shows is how weak Tim Kaine is. Not only did it show conservatives and middle of the road, Virginians, independents, that Tim Kaine is in fact a very partisan left-wing radical, but it also showed to Democrats that this guy, that they don't have any use for him, that he was bad for the Democratic ticket, and that's why he's weak, and that's why I'm confident I'm going to win.
You have made mention that Tim Kaine's son has protested with Antifa. Let me just ask you this. You know, we all have sons. You have sons. He has sons. I have sons. You do the best you can to raise them. But, you know, Corey, once they turn 21, I mean, they're an adult. They can do what they want. Not always a reflection on the parent. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, is that really a legitimate campaign issue?
Oh, yeah, it is, and I'll tell you why. You're right. I mean, I have sons, and they're not always perfect. And you know, when they do something wrong, I reprimand them. And when they become adults, I'm going to say, hey, son, that was the wrong thing to do. Tim Kaine's son is arrested in Minneapolis for violent activity, for being a member of Antifa, for wearing a mask, which is a crime. And instead of Tim Kaine saying, you know, boys will be boys, or my son made a mistake, instead of saying any of those things for attacking nonviolent Trump supporters, which Tim Kaine's son did. He's a member of Antifa. Instead of saying that his son did the wrong thing, or that I've talked to him or something like that, he applauded his son. He actually condoned his actions. So it's not so much about Tim Kaine's son. It's about Tim Kaine and what he thinks is appropriate behavior.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what you're saying is really about the way Tim Kaine reacted and not necessarily what his son did, because, again, they get to be 21, and, we all hope our sons do what we'd like them to do. Some don't, some do, but, they get to be adults, and they're adults, and then they can do whatever they please. That's the way God made it. But I get what you're saying. You're really taking issue with how Tim Kaine reacted to it, not necessarily the actions of his son. Is that the way I'm understanding it?
That's right, because essentially what we know from that is that Tim Kaine supports Antifa. He supports his son's activities in Antifa, this violent left-wing organization that's been attacking people across the country who are trying to express their freedom of speech. And that is, and so we know where his mind is, and we also know now where Tim Kaine's son got this idea that it was a good thing to viciously and violently attack physically those who are expressing their free speech.
That's fair. Just to give an example of this, the opposite way is, and I'm going from memory here, but Howard Dean was running for president in I don't remember, 2004 maybe, and he was a governor of Vermont. He was a doctor, and he was in the middle of a presidential campaign, and he was actually ahead of the polls, and his son, who was over 18, got arrested for marijuana possession or something. They found it in his car and all that, and he got arrested. He went to jail. And the way Howard Dean handled it is he was very upset with his son, said him he shouldn't have done that. He had bought him the car. He took it away, made him take the bus. So he handled it in a very different way. You can't control what your sons do, but I get what you're saying. It's then how you react to it. And I think Howard Dean handled it in his family the right way, and it had no impact going forward on his presidential campaign. Judge Moore, Alabama. I've been in Montgomery for several days. Big victory over the swamp candidate, Luther Strange. What did you make of that?
Well, I think it's huge. I think it's a huge indicator of what's going to happen in 2018. Next year, when you have all of these candidates running for the nomination, it shows that the American public, like they were in 2016, they're looking for somebody who's going to drain the swamp, not play along with the establishment, somebody who wants to work and support the President of the United States. And that's why they voted for Judge Moore. And people that came out of the rally, and Trump said why he went down there and supported Strange. He said that, look, it was a personal promise that he had made, and he was going to fulfill it. But even when he got down there, he said, maybe I made a mistake. And that was an indication that his supporters should go ahead and feel free to vote for Judge Moore. People who were coming out of that rally between Trump and Strange were saying, look, I love my president, I love President Trump, but I'm voting for Moore. So that's an indicator, not just that it's good for me, and obviously it is, but it's good for every Republican. It's good for the Republican Party, and frankly, it's good for the country that we at last break this hold that the establishment has had in Washington over the past 50 years.
So, if you get elected, are you going to be part of the drain the swamp crowd?
Well, that's true. I'm going to be the biggest swamp drainer you've ever seen next to the president.
All right, so you've gotten some criticism. This is my final question here. You've gotten criticism now by some of your potential opponents going through the undercurrent saying, yeah, but, Stewart's taken a lot of money from developers as chairman of Prince William County, a lot of money. He also fought for a taxpayer-funded baseball stadium for a single A team, $35 million. That never, ever would have made the money back because, people just don't go to single A baseball. So people have been leveling criticism at you for that, saying that's somewhat duplicitous. How do you respond to that, Corey?
Hey, well, look, you got to look at my record. I'm supported by the business community because I've been strong for business in Prince William County. It's the number one job growth county in Virginia, number 3 in the United States, and that's because we've lowered taxes, decreased regulations, focused our resources on building roads, building infrastructure, and less away from administrative costs and so forth. That's my record, bringing down taxes. Our taxes are now 30% lower than the rest of Northern Virginia, and I'm going to stand on it. And I led the nation in cracking down on illegal immigration, eliminated the concealed carry handgun fees, and I'm very proud of my record, and I hold that up against anybody's.
Can you reconcile the baseball stadium taxpayer-funded issue for us?
Well, first of all, it wasn't. It was what we were trying to do was probably the best deal for taxpayers that anybody could ever find. It was financed. It was to be financed by the team, by the private team that was going to build the baseball stadium, and what we were going to do is let them use the commuter parking lot, the commuter parking ramp. Because the baseball team needs the commuter parking ramp at a different time than when commuters need it, and so it was going to work out. It would have been a good deal, but it didn't work out.
So it didn't work out anyway. So it doesn't matter, right? I mean, at the end of the day,
well, it would have mattered if I had supported, taxpayer, forking over a big chunk of the change for a private stadium, but that wasn't the case.
Let me ask one more question here from a caller, Jim in Chesapeake, and then we'll let you go. Jim in Chesapeake says, would you please ask Corey about why he went to extraordinary efforts to get the mosque the permits that they wanted and not other churches? This is from Jim in Chesapeake.
Well, see, there's a lot of misunderstanding about this. Now, if you just look at Culpeper and you look at Henrico counties, they denied permits to a mosque when they had approved churches, and the result was they got sued. And not only were they sued by the mosque, but they were sued successfully by the Department of Justice. And you can't treat mosques any differently than you treat churches. If you do, you're going to get sued. So what had happened was, we knew that there were these law firms that specialize in these cases of discrimination against. If we had denied that, we know that we would have owed more than $3 million in legal fees to these nasty law firms that would have come in. We would have had to approve the mosque anyway, and taxpayers would have had to foot the bill in attorney's fees to some nasty out-of-state law firm to the tune of $3 million or more.
All right, we're out of time. I want to thank Corey Stewart for being with us. Corey, we always appreciate when you come on. And one thing you can always get from Corey Stewart is he's going to tell it like it is, and you're going to get candor. And, Corey, that's why we appreciate you coming on our show and answering some of the questions that some of our listeners have. Good luck with your campaign.
Hey, thanks a lot, John.
Right now, you're the front runner because, well, there's nobody else in it. So you're going to be the front runner anyway.
That's right.
And we said you're the overwhelming favorite to be the nominee. Thanks for being with us. Corey, if people want info on your Senate race, where do they go?
You go to CoreyStewart.com, or even more better is on Facebook, Corey Stewart VA. We got a finance deadline September 30th, so I could use everybody's support before that date.
All right, Facebook, Corey Stewart VA. If you can make a donation now before September 30th, he'd appreciate it. And more info on the Senate race, you can go to CoreyStewart.com. CoreyStewart.com. Thanks for being with us, man.